Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Michael Stanger. I just wanted to share with you a few words in a few minutes about this week's Parsha, this week's Torah portion. It's titled in Hebrew Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness or in the desert. It's the beginning of the third book of the Torah. In English, it's referred to as the Book of Numbers, not because it deals with math sequences, but it opens with a census. They want to number all the Israelite men, 20 and above, who could be mustered to serve in an army in event of war, because the Israelites have to wage battle as they travel through the desert into their eventual homeland, the land of Israel, which was then called Canaan. And they number all the men who are able to fight, take up arms. It turns out to be 603,550. So there were 603,550 men. That doesn't include the women and children. And it's an interesting number because at the end of 40 years, when they've concluded their traveling in the desert, remember it takes them 40 years to go through the desert, not because it was such a huge expanse where they got lost, but they weren't ready to go into the promised land yet. They had to learn to work together as a nation, as a community, as people. The elder generation died out, and the number still ends up being an even 603,550. So everyone who was lost and perished was replaced by people who were born at that time. And the rabbis say, by interesting mathematical quirk of fate, there are 603,550 letters in the Torah. It matches the number of our ancient ancestors who traveled in the desert generations upon generations ago. And they say, just as if one letter of the Torah is missing, one single solitary letter, it could make the entire Torah puzzle, meaning it's unfit, it's unkosher. Likewise, if one Israelite wouldn't serve, wouldn't help, wouldn't contribute, the entire nation might fall apart, right? We stand together or we fall apart. And it was meant to be this journey through the desert. It was meant to be a proving ground for them, an in-between state where they would learn to work together, solve problems, undertake challenges, defend one another, and it took them 40 years to learn how to do that properly. Likewise, we're being challenged in different ways, being at home, having homeschool, trying to work with our parents, cooperate, not getting to do all the things we'd want to do, maybe not getting to go to camp, unfortunately. Who knows what our plans will be for the summer, or when we'll eventually end up going back to school. I hear a lot of kids actually miss real school as opposed to what they're doing on Zoom or Google Classroom, and I can understand that. I miss seeing all of you. It's a substitute, but it's not a replacement. What I want to say is we're going through this challenge together. We're learning how to grow together. It's not easy. We're being asked, well, a lot is being asked of us. I mean, to stay home against, in some cases, our desire to be outside, especially when the weather turns nice. We could go outside, but we have to maintain social distancing, right? Something our ancient ancestors didn't have to worry about when they were traveling the desert, probably in a tight-knit community. Eventually, this will pass. We'll get to see our friends again. We'll get to engage in sports. We'll get to go to summer camp. We'll get to do all the things we want to do when we used to do and we miss doing today. We'll even get to go back to school. And we'll get to see one another. But for now, a lot is being asked of us. We're being asked to cooperate. We're being asked to be patient. And I think it's a test, but I think we're capable of passing this test. And trust in your parents, trust in your grandparents, the adults, your authority figures, your teachers. We can all help one another. We stand together or we fall apart, just like our ancient ancestors did. They didn't know what it would await them at the end. They didn't know it would take 40 years. It's not going to take us 40 years to get out of this predicament. Hopefully it shouldn't take 40 weeks either. Maybe it'll take 40 days, who knows. Eventually things will turn back to normal, and we'll learn to better appreciate all that we took for granted previously. But again, I just want to let you know that I'm here for if you ever want to talk at any point. Reach out to me, call me, text me, FaceTime me, Zoom me. Your community is always here for you. We miss you. Shabbat Shalom, and stay safe and healthy.